Welcome to the final GCSE RE revision video for Judaism. Okay, so here we are. Final paper, Judaism. It's worth 25% of your total marks. It's only an hour long, so you've done most of the hard work, and it's in two sections: belief and teachings and practices. So this is what a paper will look like. So it's split into two sections: belief and teachings and practices. Each section will have 1A, 1B, 1C and 1D style question, and they're out of 30 marks. Now if you can look carefully, you'll see that there is no spag mark for this paper. So this is what you're expected to do for the paper. So your A questions, like with the other two papers, they are worth 2 marks, so you just spend a minute on those. You'll be asked to write about a sentence. Your teacher should have sent you the key terms. Your B questions, they are out of 5 marks. They are describe skill questions, so you need to describe maybe a belief, describe a teaching, describe a practice, or describe an event. The general rule of thumb is that you should write as a paragraph and give 3 points and refer to one source of wisdom and authority. Some questions might, however, ask for 2 features or beliefs or ideas. Your C questions, you will need to write 3 P paragraphs. You are not referring to humanism or Catholic Christianity in your C questions at all. Your P paragraphs should try and include a point, some evidence or an example, and these should be explained. That's what we're looking for in this question, explanation. Your D questions, looking for evaluation and analysis. We're looking for you to give reasons for and against a statement and come to those mini conclusions at the end of every paragraph. So what makes it a strong argument, what makes it a weak argument? You might say it's strong because it's contained within the Torah, so therefore it is considered by Orthodox Jews to be the Word of God. You are not allowed to refer to Christianity at all in this paper. So do not talk about Jesus, do not talk about the Golden Rule or any of Jesus' teachings. It is not allowed at all. As you can see there, if you only give one side of an argument, no matter how good it is in your D questions, you'll only be awarded 3 out of 15. Okay, so it's vital that you give reasons for and against and then reach a justified conclusion. We are now going to look at the advanced information and covenants. So I'm going to give you some questions to look at, and these are the first 2 questions. So what did God promise Abraham, and what did Abraham and the Jews promise God? Answer those questions now. Okay, so God promised Abraham as many descendants as stars in the sky, which means a Jewish race. And he also promised Abraham and the Jewish people a promised land. We're going to talk about the promised land a little bit more. Okay, so what did Abraham and the Jews promise God? Well, they promised to believe in one God. So this is the birth of monotheism, the belief in one God. And they promised that all of the boys would be circumcised. And this is a physical sign of the covenant. Okay, I want you to pause the video now and answer this question. What does the covenant tell us about the nature of the Almighty? Pause the video now. Okay, so the covenant tells us that God is one, whole, and that there are no other gods. And this should unify Jews in the belief that they all believe in the same God. And it should, in theory, mean that there's no arguing, there's no wars, and that they are peaceful with each other. Okay, now we're thinking about practices and the importance of the covenant. So pause the video and answer these questions. So pause the video now. Okay, so Brit Milah comes from the covenant with Abraham, and this is where the baby boy is circumcised at 8 days old. Wine is dropped into the baby boy's mouth. A minyan is formed, which is a prayer with 10 Jewish men. That's in Orthodox Judaism. men and women can form a minyan in Reform Judaism. The boy is given a name and is welcomed into the community. Brit Milah and circumcision really links Jewish boys to their ancestors, who all have undertaken this practice before them. So it's a very important covenant. But however, remember, it's a covenant and a part of the covenant that only the boys can take part in. So the next question, why is the covenant important for Jewish lives? Well, the covenant is in the Torah, which many Jews and Orthodox Jews believe was given directly to them by God. It's considered to be the first covenant. Okay, so it's the birth of Judaism. The covenant helped to change the way the world thought of God. So before this covenant, maybe there was lots of religions which had multiple gods. However, this gave birth to the idea of one God and monotheism. It's an everlasting covenant. So from Abraham, it's gone through all Jews year after year. And that can be seen through the circumcision of the boys. It gave rise to the belief that Jews had a land that was theirs and promised by God, i.e. the promised land. Finally, I want you to pause the video and I want you to think about what problems may arise from this covenant with Abraham. So pause the video now and have a think and write down some answers to this question. Okay, some problems that you may want to use in your evaluation of the covenant with Abraham, if that was a question you were given. So, in the Torah it says, "You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh." This contradicts the teachings of circumcision, so we have to ask, which is correct? Now all the people that came out were circumcised, but all the people that were born in the wilderness, by the way, as they came forth out of Egypt, then they had not circumcised. Now Moses didn't circumcise his sons when they were wandering in the desert. So we have to ask the question, is it that important to circumcise all the boys? If there's one God, why has he specifically chosen a single race and treat them differently to other religions and people, i.e. by giving them a promised land? How is that omnibenevolent? How is that all-loving? Surely an omniscient, all-knowing God would have known that the promised land would have caused fighting. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on in the video. Okay, the covenant with Moses. So now what I want you to do, please, is I want you to pause the video and answer those two questions. Pause the video now. Okay, so what did God promise Moses? He promised them a promised land, which he took the Jews to after they had escaped Egypt, freedom from slavery, and also he gave them 613 commandments, which include the 10 commandments. Now, having the promised land and having commandments means the Jews are God's special people with special laws to follow, which were given directly to them by God. And what did Moses and the Jewish people promise God? Well, they promised to follow the commandments, to worship God alone, and to enter into this eternal covenant. So it wouldn't be a covenant just for the time of Moses, but it would be a covenant that would stretch all the way through their history. What practices come from the covenant? Pause the video and answer this question. Okay, Bar Mitzvah is a practice which comes from this covenant because the Jewish boy becomes son of the commandment. Okay, this is at 13, where they learn the Torah and lessons with the rabbi and the laws given to Moses from God. They're expected to follow the commandments and take an active role in the community. Now, female Orthodox Jews undertake something called Bat Shail at 12. Now, this doesn't make them girl of the commandment, okay, but it means daughter of worth, and it is a responsibility for them to follow the Torah laws which were given to Moses by God and to act as an adult in the community. Okay, next question. So pause the video and I want you to answer the two questions, which are, what does the covenant tell us about the nature of the Almighty, and why is the covenant important for Jewish lives? Pause the video now and answer those questions. Okay, so what does the covenant tell us about the nature of Almighty? Well, it tells us quite a bit. So he's a lawgiver because he gave the Jews the 613 mitzvot. Remember, the 10 commandments are included within these 613. It says that he's one, because in the 10 commandments it says, believe in no gods before me. And also he's a judge, because he judges them on whether they keep the commandments or not. So why is it important for Jewish lives? Well, it gives them special laws that set them apart from all other people. It gives them clear guidance for moral living. And it also reinforced the view that they had a special land, as God led them to it from Egypt. Okay, finally, I want you to answer this question. So pause the video and tell me what problems might arise from the covenant with Moses, also known as the covenant on Sinai. Okay, so what problems arise from the covenant? And some of these are quite high level evaluation. So even in Judaism, it is debatable whether God gave all the 613 commandments to Moses or just the 10. So Orthodox Jews might claim that God gave Moses all 613, whereas Reform Jews and liberal Jews might believe that it was just the 10 commandments. Now, modern scholars have debated whether the commandments were written by a settled community rather than a nomadic, wandering one, like the one the Jews claim God gave them to. So if this is true, it throws into dispute the whole story in Exodus, and also disputes whether actually Moses received them at all. Some scholars believe that the 10 commandments were written after the other commandments, almost as a prologue, so they summarise what the rest of the commandment says. And this puts into dispute the belief that God gave them to Moses. There's also little to no historical evidence for the life of Moses or the plagues actually happening, which again creates problems when we think about the covenant with Moses, the covenant on Sinai, as being something of worth and something that we should follow fully. Okay, so we're now going to look at the promised land. So again, this is advanced information, so this could be where your D question comes from. Now I want you to look at the 4 pictures, and I want you to tell me why the promised land is important for Jews today. Pause the video and do that now. So pause the video now. So why is the promised land important for Jews today? Well, God promised it to the Jews in the covenant with Abraham. This is a binding covenant which Jews and God need to still honour today. God led the Jews to it in the covenant on Sinai, showing it is the land specifically for the Jewish race. Jews believe the Messiah will rebuild the temple here, so all Jews can unite. Jews today all have the right to a passport in Israel, which is considered the promised land. So it is considered their birthright to settle there. So if you got a D question, an evaluation, an analysis question on the promised land, you would need to give reasons supporting it and also reasons maybe against it, so the problems with the promised land. So look at those 3 pictures, and I want you to think about what problems may arise from belief in the promised land today. Pause the video now. Okay, so what are the problems caused by belief in the promised land? Well, wars have taken place between Israel and Palestine within the promised land. Many Palestinians feel that the Jews are trying to push them out of the land. Why would an all-loving God allow war and allow for people to be dispersed from where they live and from their homes? If there is only one God, why did he decide to favour one specific race and religion, i.e. the Jews? Some Jews feel that the state of Israel should not have been set up. They believe that it is the Messiah who would set up the state, the promised land, because actually the fact that they've been separated from the promised land is seen to be a punishment from God. So our last bit of advanced information is on festivals. You are definitely going to get a D question on festivals. I don't know which of the 4 festivals you'll get a D question on, but it'll certainly be on one of the 4 festivals. So we're going to have a look at them now. So what I want you to do is to copy out the mind map, and I want you to answer as much as you can and write as much as you can for these headings. So as you've done for the other ones in the other video, write down what you know, then pause the video, and then go to your revision guide and add in a different colour new knowledge to that. Okay, so do a bit of studying on this, and then I'm going to go through each of the points, and I want you to then add even greater depth to your understanding. Off you go now. So pause the video and have a go at that now. Okay, Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. So the shofar horn is blown to symbolise a call for repentance. Jews spend time in the synagogue with prayers being said and part of the Torah being read. They eat apples dipped in honey to represent the hope of a sweet new year. Jews believe that apples have healing powers, and certainly this is a belief mentioned within the Hebrew Bible. Why is it important? Well, on Rosh Hashanah, it is believed that God writes the names of all Jews into one of his 3 books. These books are the Book of Life, for those who are wholly good, the Book of Death, for those who are truly evil, and an intermediate book, which is where most people's names are written. Jews believe that they can influence which book God writes their names in if they take action during the festival. People can do charity work or anything they feel will make up for the harm they have caused over the past year. So it's a really important festival as it sets out how the rest of the year is going to be. Some challenges and some problems. Philosophers like Kant and Bradley say that we should have a duty, to act in a certain way, and we should not act out of wrong intention. So we shouldn't just spend one day scrambling around trying to do good deeds to make up for what we've done for the rest of the year. We actually have a duty to act in a certain way throughout the whole year. Is it fair for someone to perform really good actions on one day and for these actions to make up for maybe being quite an evil person for the rest of the year? I'm not so sure. Okay, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is seen to be the holiest day of the year for Jews. Okay, it is marked in a number of ways. So for instance, people might wear white as a symbol of purity. No food or drink is consumed for 25 hours. Not like we wear makeup or any perfume. No bathing. They go to the synagogue and there are 5 synagogue services. So it's a really holy day when they really think about their faith and think about what they've maybe done wrong in their lives and what they want to do right in their lives. So it is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. It is also called the Day of Atonement, so the day where they will be forgiven. So Jews focus on asking God for forgiveness, and it is believed he will make his final judgment on the day of Yom Kippur sometime in the future. It remembers when God forgave the Israelites when they worshipped a golden calf. Okay, this was during the covenant on Sinai. So Moses went up to receive the 10 Commandments or the mitzvot, and when he came back down, they were worshipping this golden calf. So they were worshipping a false god, and Moses smashed the commandments, and he went back up. And it is believed from then the Jews needed a day of atonement every year. Okay, so what are the challenges to Yom Kippur and its importance? Well, almost all Jews observe the Sabbath law during it, even those that do not for the remainder of the year. God said, remember the Sabbath day. So would a just God look favourably on those who only kept Sabbath laws for one day of the year? Although the idea of the nature of the Almighty as judge is linked to this festival, surely God's judgment is present all year long. Maybe Jews should focus less on this festival and more on how they act across the year. So Passover, what happens? Well, the house is thoroughly cleaned, all yeast products are removed from the house. They make flatbread, which is eaten, and there is a Seder meal. So all parts of the Seder meal have a symbol and some symbolism which represents and links back to slavery and to the covenant on Sinai. So when Moses freed the slaves from Egypt, and when God freed the slaves from Egypt. So for example, the lamb bone reminds them of the sacrifice of the lamb during Passover. So the story goes that the last of the plagues was the angel of death, and they were asked to kill the lamb and put its blood around their doorposts. That lamb is remembered in the Passover meal. They will also have bitter herbs at the Seder plate, and these are to remind them of the bitterness of slavery. Remember, the Jews were slaves in Egypt and they were freed from slavery. They also go to the synagogue on this day. What's the importance of Passover? Well, it celebrates the escape of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt over 3,000 years ago. It reminds Jews that God will come to their aid when they most need it. It is a time to remember the past and to show hope for the future. And it's also a time to celebrate with family the freedom of the Jewish people. So what are the challenges to Passover festival, and what are the challenges to maybe the importance and nature of it? Well, there's little historical evidence for the existence of Moses and for the plagues. So it calls into question the validity and truth of Passover as an event. So therefore, is it worth celebrating? Why would an all-loving God allow the Jews to be slaves for so long? And really, is it worth celebrating that God allowed them to be slaves for a long time? Even if he did ultimately free them. Passover didn't liberate the Jews. It liberated them for a period, but they've been tortured for different periods throughout history. For example, the Holocaust. So it begs the question, is Passover really worth celebrating? So Sukkot, what happens? Well, they will build tents or huts, which might just be in the garden all year round, which they will, during Sukkot, the 7 days, they will sleep in them and eat all of their meals in them. Okay, they have leaves, fruit and veg on display. It's a harvest festival. The Torah is celebrated through singing and dancing. They wave a palm leaf with an etrog fruit, which is like a citrus fruit, in 6 directions to show that God is everywhere. So what's its importance? Well, Jews are commanded to celebrate this festival in the Torah. It says, "You shall dwell in Sukkot 7 days so that you will know how the Israelites lived." It is one of the 630 mitzvot and helps Jews connect with their ancestors who fled slavery in Egypt and lived in tents and huts for 40 years. What are the challenges to Sukkot and its importance? Well, only men are commanded to sleep in sukkahs, the huts. Does this make their connection with their ancestors greater? The sukkahs must not be fully covered so that those inside can see the stars. Now, extreme weather would make this festival pretty difficult to observe, especially if you are in a country like the UK, or maybe here in the northeast, where it's it is quite cold at parts of the year when Sukkot is taking place. So it would make it a difficult festival to observe. Right, we're going to look at some explained skill questions. So you're going to look at 4 C questions. Now, what I've done is I have given you the start of each of the 4 questions, and I've put 12 pieces, 12 paragraphs, which would answer 4 different C questions. What you need to do is you need to unjumble the information, and you need to write the questions to finalize the questions. So I'm going to give you the first one. So this is the first one. It says, explain different Jewish attitudes to life after death. So these 3 paragraphs were in the information that you've just seen. So your answer would be, if you've got this C question, Orthodox Jews believe in some form of resurrection. Resurrection is the belief that the dead will come back to life with a physical body. Some rabbis argue that the resurrection of the dead will occur during the Messianic age. Belief in life after death affects Orthodox Jewish attitudes to cremation and organ transplants, as they believe they must be buried complete so they can be resurrected whole. Some Reform Jews believe the soul lives on after death. The body remains on earth and only the soul goes to heaven. Heaven is not defined, however, it is sometimes called the world to come. So, I want you to pause the video now, and I want you to unscramble these C questions, and I want you to complete the C questions fully. So I want you to write what the C question is, and I want you to tell me what the answers to those questions are. Off you go. So here's our second question and second answer. Explain different Jewish attitudes to the Messiah. And your answer might be, Reform Jews believe that it will be the good actions of humans that will bring in the Messianic age of peace. They rejected the idea of an individual person who will be the Messiah. Orthodox Jews still believe that the Messiah will come. They believe he will rebuild the temple and unite all Jews. This will allow all Jews to worship together and fulfill many of the mitzvot. Orthodox Jews believe that the Messiah will be a man, a warrior, and will bring peace to the Messianic age. Okay, your third answer. And your third question is, explain different Jewish attitudes to synagogue worship. In Orthodox synagogues, men and women have different roles. Only men are able to form a minyan, a prayer which requires 10 participants. Men and women also sit apart. Hebrew is used in readings and throughout synagogue services. This is in Orthodox synagogues. This means that they are as close to the services at the temple as possible. In Reform synagogues, these are based on traditional elements, but they contain more English and far less Hebrew, because they believe it is more important that people understand it. Men and women have more equal roles, with women able to read during the services. Okay, your final question here was, explain different Jewish attitudes to Bat Shail. And their answer was, Orthodox Jewish girls have a ceremony called Bat Shail, daughter of worth, when they are 12. These ceremonies aren't as large as bar mitzvahs because they do not have the same religious duties to fulfill. The Bat Shail ceremony includes a special service in the synagogue, followed by the girl giving the presentation of some of the things she has learned in her study of Judaism. Reformed Jewish girls become bat mitzvah rather than Bat Shail, also at the age of 12. Now, in Reform Judaism, once they've had and become bat mitzvah, they can form part of a minyan. In Orthodox Judaism, they are not at any point allowed to form part of the minyan. It also means, after the bat mitzvah, that in Reform Judaism only, that the girl can lead prayers and read from the Torah scrolls at the synagogue. So these are the 4 questions and 4 answers that I have given and that you've just sorted. What is very important, and the reason why I've chosen these questions specifically, is because you could get a C question which asks you to explain the different Jewish attitudes to, say, life after death, or the Messiah, the synagogue worship, or Bat Shail. Okay, so as you can see here, I've given views from the Orthodox tradition and from the Reformed tradition. So just be wary that if they do ask about different attitudes, that you're looking to give from 2 different traditions. Now, also of note that on the specification, these are the main areas where they ask about differences between Orthodox and Reformed Judaism. So I would take a guess that if they were going to do that, these might be the questions that they ask. So everyone seems to love sources and always wants to know some sources of wisdom and authority, so that's what we're going to focus on. now. Okay, you have in front of you some quotes from scripture and also some of the themes from the course. Now, what I want you to do is to have a look at each of the bullet points, and I want you to either attribute a quote or a theme to it. So, for instance, the first one, creation, you would be thinking about a quote from the Genesis account of creation. Off you go. And here's the example. So creation, and the quote you could have written would have been, "Let there be light," from the book of Genesis. Pause the video now. So, creation, let there be light, from the book of Genesis. There's lots you could have used for that, but obviously links to the idea God is a creator. Orthodox Jews believe that creation happened within 6 days, with God resting on the seventh, where Reformed Jews believe, like Catholics, that science and religion work together to explain the how and why. So, the second one was this belief in one God from the Shema prayer. The third one, you could have used the example of either the burning bush, or you could have talked about this idea that Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, okay, because the Lord descended on it in fire. That's from Exodus, and that's from, obviously, covenant with Sinai. Circumcise the boys, that's from the covenant with Abraham and from the ritual of Brit Milah. The next one was about the promised land and the covenant with Abraham. Sanctity of life, you could have used the quote, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," in Jeremiah. Remember, the concept of Pikwak Nefesh states that we could overrule the commandments if we are saving a life. So we could maybe help someone on the Sabbath, or we could maybe be a doctor who works on the Sabbath, or we could allow an abortion to happen if it saves the life of the mother. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, that's in the Tanakh, that is linked to Shabbat, Jewish holy day, which happens because Orthodox Jews believe God rested on the seventh day. The next one is about the synagogue and this idea that actually the synagogues shouldn't have any statues or pictures of Moses or God in there. The next one, marriage, they become one flesh in the book of Genesis. That was part of one of the readings at my wedding. And the final one, keeping kosher, you must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Now this is really important because it means we are not allowed cheeseburgers, because what it's saying is we're not allowed to eat, or what it kind of links to the belief that we shouldn't have, or Jews shouldn't have, say, beef and cheese at the same time. It means that some Jews will have maybe cereal in the morning and then wait quite a long time, maybe 6 or 7 hours, before they can have something which contains meat in it. It also means that the kitchens have 2 sinks, one which would wash anything dairy and another sink which would wash anything where meat has been, which would be quite challenging, I suppose, and it is certainly a challenge for kosher. The next section is called Features of. So, look at the pictures, and I want you to write down what these are the features of. Off you go. Pause the video now. So, the first 4, we have the Bima, which is the raised platform where the Torah is read from, allows the congregation to hear the word of God and the 5 books of Moses, the Torah. The next one, we've got the Ner Tamid, the eternal light, which symbolizes God's presence within the synagogue. Next, we have the Torah scrolls. These Torah scrolls are considered by Orthodox Jews to be the Word of God. They're the 5 books of Moses, and they are dressed and treated with the utmost respect. And finally, we have the Ark, which contains the Torah scrolls, and it is one of the holiest parts of the synagogue. The next pictures represent items worn during worship. So we have the tefillin, which are boxes which contain handwritten texts from the Hebrew Bible. It is commanded that Jews wear these during worship, between their eyes and on their hand. The talit is a prayer shawl. Again, they are instructed to wear these in Scripture and wear them during worship. It is a sign of respect to God, and there are 613 tassels on the end of them to remember the commandments. Finally, the kippah is used to cover men's head in worship. It is a sign of respect and devotion to God. Okay, the final pictures belong to mourning rituals. So we have the low seats. Jews sit on the low seats in the 7-day period after a relative has died. Covered mirrors. Jews cover their mirrors in the 7-day period after a relative has died, which is called sit and shiva. And finally, if it is a parent who's died, the children of the deceased mourn for a whole year. So they don't go to any of the religious rituals or festivals, and that kind of works alongside the commandment, honour thy father and mother. Okay, so the final part of the video is going to be a quick fire question round. So I'm not going to speak on the first way round of the questions. So the questions are just going to play through, and what I want you to do within the 10 seconds of when they come up is I want you to write down quickly an answer to them. Or you might just want to verbalise your answer to them. Okay, but make sure you're really thinking about them, okay, and make sure you are trying to answer them. Then what you'll be shown is an answer to those questions. So I want you to self-assess, self-check whether you've got those answers right, and if you haven't, maybe that's where your revision needs to focus on, because the concepts within these questions are quite broad and kind of work across lots of different parts of the course. Okay, so you're going to see the questions, 10 seconds per question, write or verbalise an answer, and then you're going to self-assess. Okay, so again, the questions are going to come up, but this time with the answer. So what I want you to do is to just self-assess your answers. Now, I'm not going to speak over this, so you're going to read and concentrate on this, okay? So I just want you to self-assess your answers. So well done everyone, you have made it through the final video for revision. Now what next? Now you should have been sent B and D plans. Have a look over those, you could make revision plans to them. You should also have model answers for D questions for this part of the course, so have a look through those. Look at what the evaluation is like in those model answers, because it's really important that if you're going to get the top marks, that you know what good evaluation looks like. The mock is very important, so have a look at the mock that I made for you and complete it. Now the last 2 mocks that I made have been about 70 to 80% correct in terms of the topics that have come up. I can't promise that this one will be the same, okay, but hopefully it will be, and if anything, it's just good practice. So what I would do with the mock is I'd give yourself an hour, and I would, in silence, work through it in an hour, stop, have a break, and then use the information on the back to self-assess, and then really think about, well, if I don't know that now, how am I going to address that? So you would address that then through revision cards, or through mind maps, or through self-testing, or just through watching this video again. Now obviously, if you've got any questions, please let your teachers know or email me, and I will support you through this as much as possible. Okay, we're nearly there. You've only got 1 more hour of examinations, and then your RE is done for 2022. Okay, good luck everyone.